give us the refuge update, and then I'll switch out to the business slides.
Okay, the water levels at the refuge are dropping rapidly. It's perfect for shorebirds right now. There's all kind of dunlins, not like we had 10, 15 years ago, but there's a lot of dunlins there. Both of the yellow legs, woolets, avocets, black-bellied plovers. It's really good for shorebirds. The ducks, a lot of blue-winged teal, quite a number of shovelers, and the other ones are just a few here and there, some of the other species. The black-throated gray warbler is still there. And if anybody needs the exact location, Rochelle can give that to you. But it's a bird from the southwest, and occasionally a few of them end up in the east. One probably a once-in-a-lifetime thing. So if you haven't seen it, you get out, try to see the black-throated gray warbler.
Yeah,
and
it's
white egrets. The snowies, the last time we were out, there was probably close to 1,000 snowies scattered around, quite a few great egrets, cattle egrets, little blues. There were quite a few of the reddish egrets also. So for the wading birds and for the shorebirds, now is a good time to do black point.
Fantastic. Thank you. Thanks so much for that, Jim. All right. Well, welcome everyone to our monthly meeting. Just a couple of housekeeping things before we get started with our presenter and a couple of chapter business items. So first of all, once we are ready to start with our presenter, I'm going to be muting everybody. And when we get to the Q&A portion, would like to take yourself off of mute, you can unmute your device, or you'll see a little thing pop up where I'll say request to unmute for you to unmute yourself. If also you're having any issues with it sounds a little wobbly, that kind of stuff, we sometimes suggest that you go off video because that's a bandwidth thing. And for people who haven't used Zoom a lot, if you hover over the top of the pictures, you're going to see kind of 4 little boxes, sort of like a Rubik's Cube and that kind of stuff. There's one that says small speaker video. If you select that box, then just the speaker's picture will be in the corner and you'll be able to see more of the screen. So that's something that you can select that view for yourself. And then Megan is helping me in the background so that she'll be watching the chat. If you have any problems that you are able to type in the chat, she'll be helping and supporting with that while we're going through the presentation. But we're delighted to have everyone here tonight. So for anyone who I don't know, I think I know everybody, but in case there's somebody, there is someone who's joined whose initials on the sheet I don't recognize. So I'm Rochelle Hood. I'm fortunate to serve all of you as being the vice president of this chapter. Jim, who was just speaking, is our chapter president. We have Deborah with us tonight, who is our chapter secretary, and I've not yet seen Jeff yet, but he's our treasurer. So we welcome you on behalf of the board for joining us this evening. We've just finished social time, so thank you everyone for giving your birding update. Sounds like a lot of exciting things going on. Next, in just a moment, we're going to have Bert come on the stage, and he's going to give us a field trip update. And then I'm also going to share with you some details about the meeting next month. And then I'll introduce Becky, our speaker this evening. And then I will say that just like when we were in person, we had that fun little bit that when you came in and got greeted, there was always a game or activity or something to do and you had a chance to win a prize. Well, we've brought that back in virtual format. So there's going to be an opportunity to win prizes 2 different ways. So we have some wonderful prizes that were donated by Bert and Val Alm that are tickets to the zoo. And then the other one I'm going to keep as a surprise because we have a special announcement that you are hearing it here first. And that will be part of our prize event as well. So let me turn it over to Bert, who will come on and give you an update related to our field trips. Bert, over to you. And Bert, I think you're still on mute.
Takes a little bit to find that mute button.
There you go.
Okay, so for the upcoming field trips, I've got a slew of them out there. Chain of Lakes Park will be tomorrow, and already we're kind of at the point where I think there's only one or two people left on the wait list. We've had a lot of people cancel in the last couple of days. So if anyone did sign up on the wait list or didn't sign up because the wait list was pretty long, you may want to still do that. I just sent a reminder out to people to, if they were signed up and just now realize they can't go tomorrow, to remove themselves so someone else can move up on the wait list. Then on January 30th, we're going to go into Orange County to Oakland Nature Preserve and do a short walk out there, do an area that I did with the North Shore Birding Festival back in December. And we'll be looking for some sparrows and some of the field birds. If we have time, we'll also head out to the south end of Lake Apopka. They got a little trail that goes out to a overlook there. And then one of the things that I've been starting to do on all of the field trips is put in a couple of additional places you may want to go to if you want to keep birding after our field trip's over. So for the Oakland Nature Preserve, I identified Newton Park that's out there, and I think it still has the bronzed cowbird showing up out there fairly regularly. I saw that back in December, and it's got these beautiful vampire-like red eyes, so you'll want to go and look for that. In February, we've got the Oak and Palm Hammock Trails, and we'll be I'll check it out, see how good the trails are ahead of time, whether we'll do oak or palm or both. And again, I've got a list of different places we can go. I should point out that for the Chain of Lakes Park, anyone that's up that way may afterwards want to go and try and get that black-throated gray up off of Shiloh Marsh Road, and you can go look for that. Then on February 28th, the Turkey Creek Sanctuary. Kate's been doing some wonderful educational activities up at Turkey Creek. So we're going to go out and do some practice and get kind of prepared for, see if there's any early spring migrants starting to move up. We may do this trip again a little bit later in the spring. We tend to sometimes have some good spring migrants coming through there, the warblers. I also want to point out that we have Project Feeder Watch is still ongoing, and it runs until April 9th. The Cornell Lab is still accepting participants. It does cost $18 if you're a Cornell Lab member. It's only $15. But I've got a, in Meetup, if you go to past events, because I've put the start date as the first day of Project Feeder Watch back in November, you can go back and you can look for that and get all of the details and the link to where Feeder Watch is, or you can send me an email and I'll let you know more about that. And then in February, it's the Great Backyard Bird Count. Now this is going to be essentially an individual type activity, and what they're trying to do is just encourage more people to get out and use eBird to do bird counts. And you can do it anywhere in your backyard, anywhere you're at. And for those of you that were on the eBird presentation that David and Dee did last night, David even said, hey, sometimes when I'm in the grocery store parking lot, I see the birds and I just spend 5 minutes and quickly record those in eBird. So that's what they're looking for during the Great Backyard Bird Count, just trying to get as much recording of data and helping with all of the citizen science, community science type activities that are going on out there. So anything you can do to help. And I've got all of these are in Meetup, with the Feeder Watch being in the past events section. Are there any questions for me? Very good. Go ahead, Rochelle.
I'm taking too long to unmute. I do have a question.
Oh,
how do you sign up for the Great Backyard Bird Count?
so in the Meetup announcement that I put out, I've got the links.
Okay.
If you just type in Great Backyard Bird Count in Google, it'll bring it up. And you technically, you don't have to sign up. And anybody that does eBird during that 4 days, the February 12th to the 15th, it will be counted in Great Backyard Bird Count. But if you want to see the results from the Great Backyard Bird Count, what everybody recorded, you'll want to go to that website and get a little bit more information. It used to be it had its own way of collecting data. You had to go to that website and enter everything, and then they realized, hey, just make it easy for everybody, put it all in eBird.
So that's all you have to do is use eBird for your count during that time, and they'll count that. We don't have to do anything else.
Correct. But
Okay.
but if you want to see the results of everybody in the world,
Total.
that's where you'll want to go, is that website.
Cool. Thank you.
Thank you. Shiloh Marsh Road.
The bird at Shiloh Marsh Road is the black-throated gray warbler.
Bert, where is Oak and Palm Hammock Trails?
Oak and Palm Hammock Trails are just a little bit to the east of the visitor center. I think it's less than a mile
Okay,
east of the visitor
thank
center.
you, at the Wildlife Refuge.
I had another question. I'm sorry. This is Pat, and I wanted to know about the field trip tomorrow. I was just wondering how long the trails are, because I'm limited to how far I can walk. So I hate to tie up something. I'm going tomorrow. Don't count me out for that one. But I'm just suggesting that maybe you did and maybe I missed it. Put the amount of miles or whatever that's in it. You know, like this one coming up that you're talking about,
Right.
that you found in the birding.
Yeah, I think I try to put it in there. There's 3 miles of trails. We're not going to do all 3 miles, but what's nice about Chain of Lakes is it has a few areas where you can cross over and come back. So if you just want to do the short loop,
Yeah.
it's probably like a mile to a mile and a half.
Right.
We're probably going to go to the second bridge, because that's one that you go. You need to go to the second bridge to get to the tower, and we'll go up on the tower and take a look out. And then it goes even further, goes all the way back behind Parish Hospital. So I mean, if you really wanted to do a lot of exploring, there's a lot to do there at Chain of Lakes, but we're not going to do the whole area.
So how far is the first one? You said a little more than a mile or something?
Yeah, I think it's probably a little closer to a mile and a half.
And the second one is the one you're going to take to the tower?
Yeah, and so that probably makes it about 2.25 miles, I think.
Altogether.
Yeah.
Look on top.
Sorry, Kay, did you say something?
Oh, excuse me. No, that was a mistake. Sorry.
Okay, no worries. And also, Pat, if you've not been to Chain of Lakes Park, there's a lot of paved sidewalk areas with
Right.
what I recall, I can't remember how far it's spaced out, but there are also some benches along the way because it's more like a city park, I would say, versus a traditional trail as far as that goes, if that helps
Okay.
at all.
That sounds great too. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. So thanks, Bert. Anything else, Bert, before we go on?
No, I just want to remind everyone that we are following all of the COVID protocols. And so I've got all the information on that in the meetup. So that's why we're limiting the number of participants. Where we have 20 participants and 2 leaders, we'll split up into 2 groups to keep the groups a little bit smaller, try to maintain some of the social distancing. And so in that case, Pat, you may want to go with the group that there's even a shorter way if depending on if you go clockwise versus counterclockwise, and we can discuss that when we're at the parking lot.
Okay, that's what I'll do then.
Wonderful, thank you. All right, so Kate has an exciting announcement related to a class that she is leading. Kate, would you like to share the information?
Absolutely. I will start by saying that there was a January, or still is an ongoing January class that was a beginning class, kind of the basics of bird watching, but registration is closed for that one for January. I will be offering it again this spring. That's the plan, but I don't have a date for that yet. Bert's been really kind to put these on Meetup, even though they're really being They're not Space Coast directly. They're actually part of Turkey Creek Sanctuary's educational opportunities. So, the next class that's coming up, it was named before the topics were decided. So it's got kind of a vague name of Joys of Birdwatching, but I decided to make this second class to be more of an intermediate or advanced class on some of the more challenging things we encounter as birders. So week 1 will be on Florida's shorebirds. It's not going to cover every single one. It's only an hour long, so it's not going to cover every single one, but it's going to cover most of them and will hopefully give you some tips for identifying them a little bit more easily. Week 2 is going to be challenging insectivores, so focused on warblers and I think vireos, but things like flycatchers and some other insectivores will be covered briefly. I know it says not recommended for beginners, but when I wrote that up, we were talking about the 2 different classes. So the first one was in January was really for very beginner birders. Oops. And that's okay. The second, so if you're still new to birding, those are fine. But if you are still working out how to focus binoculars, this is probably not going to be the most enjoyable class because it's going to move kind of fast through the birds. But it's being held on 2 Sundays in February, the 7th and the 21st. There is a cost because the money goes directly to support the Turkey Creek Sanctuary. And we do record the session. So if you can't make the session, you can watch the recording on Zoom. If you're interested, all of the registration is being handled by Turkey Creek Sanctuary Society. So you can email Lori at turkeycreekfriends@gmail.com.
And Kate, would you mind putting that in the chat? So
Not at all, yeah.
That'd be perfect.
Right now, sure.
All right. Anything else on the class or any other questions for Kate? All right, let me just pan through. I don't see anyone's hand up. So, all right, so carrying on.
Wait, I couldn't unmute fast enough.
Okay, go ahead, Pat.
I had a question for Kate. Do you know if there's very many people signed up already?
I think it's somewhere less than 10. I haven't checked with Lori this week, but we had 6 or 7 on Tuesday, and they keep trickling in. So,
well, because it's virtual,
fewer than 10. Yep,
okay,
no limits.
So it's virtual. You can have a bunch, right? 50.
Yeah, there's no limit. So
okay.
I can have, I think 100 is my limit on the Zoom. They limit me to 100 participants. So that would be amazing. Wonderful. I don't think that we'll have 100.
Well, you already got me, so don't worry about that.
Awesome. Looking forward to it.
Oh, all right. Thank you. Any other questions for Kate? Okay.
I will say one final follow-up. We haven't posted it yet because it's a little up in the air, but the plan, depending on how things go, is to have a March kind of follow-up to the January and February series in person with David Simpson. And that'll be at Turkey Creek Sanctuary in March. But again, we're kind of holding off on that announcement just to see how things are going, because the situation with COVID changes all the time. So but that'll be an announcement soon.
Kate, is there a way you could put the links, registration links on the Audubon's webpage or something?
It's already on there.
It's on. Okay.
It's on Meetup. Yeah, it's on
is.
Meetup since you have to pre-register. So if you
It
go
has
to
to
Meetup,
be. It's on Meetup.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
I wasn't on Meetup. Okay.
Yep. And thank you, Bert, for doing that. I appreciate it.
Anytime.
Okay. All right. So thank you so much for that, Kate. And then our last couple little bits of chapter business, just to let everyone know what's coming up in February. There's an amazing project that UCF has been working on for some period of time regarding purple martins. Anna, who's the head of that, has bringing us all kinds of interesting data about the outcomes from this project. And also, she's going to announce that they're starting some work specifically with Orlando wetlands related to this study. So she'll be sharing that. We'll be one of the earliest groups to hear some of the details related to that. So I'll use that as a teaser and hope that you'll all join us back on February 19th for that, our next general meeting next month. Okay, so let's get to the good stuff, why we're here tonight. So we're talking a little bit about rockets, we're talking a little bit about space shuttles, and how does this all really relate to what happens with nature? I mean, how do they all coexist there? It's my real pleasure to welcome Becky Bolt, and you see all of our details here, but what I'm going to really point out is what's tremendous about Becky in many, many ways is that she has, if you think about this, 3 decades, so more than 30 years of living in this environment as technology has evolved, as climate changes have gone on, as all kinds of things have happened with the coexistence between the National Wildlife Refuge at Kennedy Space Center and all of the wildlife that exists out there. And so it's really an amazing thing when you think about how much has changed across that time and what's all going on at the Space Center right now. And she's been there to be a witness to that. And also, she is, when I said that we're going to have another very special announcement, has just released a book. And we're going to talk a little bit about that because it's related to the prizes here at the end. And a name that many of you will know, Charlie Venuto, has written the foreword to her book. So 2 special people in our local environment here are part of this book, and we'll hear a little bit more about that. So I'm going to call her award-winning because she wins my award for a fabulous book. Miss Becky, let me welcome you to the stage. I'll stop sharing and turn it over to you. And thank you so much for joining us. Becky, over to you.
Thank you so much. 3 decades, that sounds so long. Oh my God.
You started when you were 2, I know.
Right. I just felt more gray hair pop out.
All right. I'm going to take a quick screenshot. Now you can go ahead and screen share because I always like to take a picture of everybody. Oh, there's Carol. Hi, Carol.
I'm looking to see where my thing is. Okay, Rochelle, help me get to it.
All right, so depending on, you're either on the very bottom where you hover over on the very top. If you hovered down, then the screen share will come up.
I see screen share, and I already did that. Maybe I did it too fast. Maybe you were still on it.
I might have still been sharing.
Nope, I see your screen, and I see a whiteboard and an iPhone and a post attendee Zoom.
Do you have the PowerPoint open already? Did you have that open in the background? For it to be one of your choices, you have to open that first.
I'll open that first. Sorry, guys.
Okay. Yep, no worries. I remembered that from yesterday where we hadn't got to you having you had that open yet. Otherwise, it doesn't know where you have it hidden. That's what I always say. And there's the Mako family. Hello, Mako family.
Thank you.
Just giving me a minute to say hello to everybody else. And Marilyn's joined us as well. Hello, Marilyn. There's Charlie. Hey, Charlie. There we go. I hope you heard my announcement saying that you were part of the fabulous forward. All right, Becky, can I help you further or are you doing okay? Can you find it?
I've opened my thing.
And then that share button in the lower right corner.
I'm getting, that's what I'm not getting to is the share button.
You think you got it?
Nope, I don't.
Okay. Let me ask you, or would you want to, do you want me to go ahead and drive from my device then?
Give me a minute.
Okay. I'm standing by and ready in case you need me to do that.
All right. I have you on my exit minimize video. There we are. Woohoo! There it is. We're there.
Okay. So probably still, there we go. It's coming up. And there we go. All you'll need to do is put yourself in maximize view.
Right.
And then at this point, everyone, we're going to go ahead and mute everyone else now that we have Becky on. And Becky, over to you then.
Okay. Good evening. Thank you so much. I have already enjoyed the heck out of this. And I'm going to be hitting you up to find out where that warbler is. So, like I said, when Rochelle says 3 decades of work out at the Space Center, it has been a journey and something that I've really enjoyed. I got my bachelor's degree and my master's over at UCF and got my job pretty much right after that. And it's the only real job I've ever had. And I always say that if I put my mind to it, I can learn something every single day. And I just feel really blessed to have had this journey. So this is not a bird talk. There's some bird pictures in it, but it's more of a how do we balance the technology with the nature out at the refuge. And I just love this Serbian proverb that I found: be humble, for you are made of earth, be noble, for you are made of stars. To me, that just sums up the relationship between the refuge and what's there and our quest as human beings to go further. So welcome to KSC. Without a doubt, the site of humankind's greatest technological achievement. I don't think anyone would argue that. It's 140,000 acres of habitat with occupied facilities and infrastructure, but less than 7,000 acres of that are actually used for space operations. So that leaves a whole lot of unoccupied, undeveloped area. And the reason they have that is when NASA bought the property, they could not be launching rockets over people's houses. So most of what's out there is buffer for the things that go on, like launching rockets. 8,500 plus, I'm going to say plus or minus employees right now. It's kind of like a ghost town out there. Everybody's on COVID restrictions. I was out there today, and unless you're declared mission essential, you're not supposed to be working, and you're supposed to be working from home. So it's kind of the Friday before 3-day weekend. I think there was probably 50 of us out there, but there's 421 species of animals, and 14 of those are federally protected under the Endangered Species Act. And that's more than any other wildlife refuge in continental United States. A lot of people, even people that have been here a long time, don't realize that how special Merritt Island is because of that. Human safety is of utmost importance, and all animals are legally protected. Even if they're not federally or state listed, everything's protected. So a lot of what I do is called operational support. That's why I can go out to the Space Center now, because my support to these operations is considered essential. So I can pretty much go out there whenever I need to. And the goal of that, and I'm just going to read this, to provide real-time consultation, data, and assistance to NASA, other contractors, and subcontractors doing projects that potentially impact KSC habitats and or wildlife. So anytime anybody does pretty much anything that is in the vegetation, it's on the ground, in the air, anything like that that could potentially impact habitats or wildlife, we look at it. I do a lot of office work, National Environmental Policy Act, NEPA documentation. So environmental assessments, environmental impact statements for really big projects where they want to know what the long-term environmental impacts are going to be of some of these projects. Smaller things get what we call a record of environmental consideration. So even if you're just digging a trench or putting up a tower or doing anything like that, you have to put in a checklist, an environmental checklist, and it comes back and you get a rec, what we call a rec, with all of the things that you have to do. And it's not just wildlife and ecological stuff. It has to do with hazardous waste and all of the safety considerations, all of those things. Excavation permits are what we call dig permits. You don't put a shovel into the ground out there without an excavation permit, because over the years, NASA bought that property in the early 60s. There's a whole lot of stuff running under the ground, and you don't want to hit it with a shovel or a bulldozer. I do wildlife species lists for special projects and areas to tell people what they can expect to find in those areas or expect to impact. Site plan reviews, same thing. We do environmental baseline surveys, and I'm doing more of those now because I'm sure if you pay much attention to the Space Center, you know we are moving in more and more into a commercial operation. There are SpaceX, Space Florida, Boeing. There's many more companies that are out there working. So if they come and they take over a particular building or an area, before they do that, we do an environmental baseline survey. And it just lists everything that has to do with ecological environmental stuff. They lease this area or this building for a specific amount of time. And when they turn it back over, it has to be in at least as good or better condition as when they got it. And then We also, in our ecological program, we do a lot of peer-reviewed scientific publications and technical reports. I've got, I think it's about 35 peer-reviewed scientific publications, which is great on my resume. It's something that we do not because it's great on my resume, but we do publish things because we have such an amazing resource out there and such amazing support from NASA, and they encourage us to put our data out for the rest of the world to use. Now, the field work is what I like most. And there's different areas that I work in. One of the busiest areas that I work in is with remediation. And back in the 60s and pretty much up until the 70s, when people started thinking green, people didn't realize that when you take chemicals and you use things and you dump them on the ground, that they don't just disappear into oblivion. They go into the groundwater, they go into the soils, they get contaminated. And so nobody was doing anything intentionally. We just didn't have the knowledge back then to know what the impacts of some of the actions were. So there's a fairly large group of people that work in the remediation area. They go and they test the groundwater, they test the soils, and they find areas that are contaminated and they clean them up. Well, before they can start doing all that poking and prodding and doing things on the ground and digging out the contamination, I have to go out and do surveys because a lot of animals have moved into those areas. And so it's a balancing act. Gopher tortoises. I'm going to be saying lots about gopher tortoises because they're trouble. Gopher tortoises are trouble. They're not very smart and they like it high and dry where people like to build things. If you probably know that from your neighborhoods and your houses, but they also they're kind of lazy. They like to build places where the dirt's already been disturbed. And so a lot of these remediation projects have impacts to gopher tortoises, and we have to go out, find all the burrows, mark them, try to limit the amount of impacts. And occasionally I have to move gopher tortoises out of the area to save them basically from their burrows being crushed. And what I do for relocation of gopher tortoises is I don't take them far away. I've spent many, many years studying gopher tortoises, and it's my true belief that we know that they have a home range. And if I only move them a little bit out of harm's way, then they're likely still within their home range, and they're not as likely to get out in the road. Wherever you take them, they're going to try to come back. They got little magnetic things like a bird in their brain, and they're going to try to come back. So I always try to just take them as distance as possible when I have to move gopher tortoises for these things. Sometimes birds, other animals are impacted by these, but definitely for the remediation stuff, gopher tortoises are the biggest pain. Construction. There is not as much construction now as there used to be. That is pad 39B, and those three towers are the lightning protection towers that they put up there. They're 650 feet tall. We had to do endangered species consultation with the Fish and Wildlife Service Endangered Species Office when they put those up. And part of what we had to do for mitigation was for 3 years in the spring and in the fall during the migration season, I had a route that I drove around the pad and around those towers to look for bird kills. And when I was going through this talk a little while ago, I thought I should have probably not put dead bird pictures in for the Audubon people, but yeah, sorry. But this is what we found. Very, very few birds ran into those towers. I was shocked. After 3 years, I probably didn't get 24 birds. I was out there for 3 weeks in the fall and 3 weeks in the spring for 3 years, every day. And what was interesting to me was those towers were not the problem, but that water tank to the left, most of the birds that I did find that were dead were because of that water tank. And that thing had been out there for years and nobody had ever looked, which I found to be interesting. So NASA's very intent and very serious about their responsibility for this, for the damage that they cause. Other construction things, you would think that This is our new headquarters building before it was built. And you would think that things being built in this kind of a almost urban setting right there with all those buildings and roads around, that there wouldn't be much wildlife stuff. But I got called out there quite frequently to look at nests that birds had built on their high lifts and to chase raccoons out of their buildings and things like that. Because it's a wildlife refuge, you can't really do anything and say, oh, well, it's too developed. You're not going to cause any problems. There's not going to be any interaction with wildlife. Everything we do out there has to take that into consideration. Demolition. There's a lot of buildings coming down, and that's because some of these buildings, again, they were built in the early 60s. They're no longer useful. They're falling apart. They cost more to upkeep than they cost to use them, and they just sometimes they just need to come down. They're not safe anymore. This is one of my favorite stories because this was called the VPF, and the demolition of this building was held up for almost 2 years because of ospreys. If you go, I'm going to go back. Okay, no, at that top picture with the high lift, up at the top of that high lift, there's a sort of a garage door thing, and it had this big metal piece of metal that came off of that. There was no way to get to that except to our high lift, and osprey for years had built a nest out there. I know that osprey was putting that nest out there many, many years, and then they decided to take the building down. So the osprey was out there, and it laid the eggs, and we said, well, sorry, you can't tear this building down. Once the eggs are in there, you can't do that. You're going to have to wait till the chicks fledge. So they said, okay, they would wait. And so during the time of the year when there's not osprey nesting, they lost their funding. They couldn't take their building down because the money went away for whatever reason. So the next year, they get their money back, and it's the beginning of osprey nesting season again. So we tried, if you look down in that bottom picture with the arrow, we tried all kinds of things to discourage the ospreys from coming there and working on that nest and nesting again. I tied flagging tape, and right under that arrow, you see the osprey's heads. She's laughing at that flagging tape. She thinks that's hysterical. They soldered some more metal up on the end of that piece of metal that was sticking out, and they just used it to hold the nest sticks down. So again, they laid their eggs, 3 eggs, and hatched, and we told them, well, sorry, you can't tear this building down because that's an active nest. And the kids hatched. I said ospreys 3, humans 0. And after the nesting season, they jumped right in, took the building down, and as part of their mitigation, they put up a nest platform. And this platform was about, I don't know, maybe 12, 15 feet tall. That building, you see how tall that building is. I thought there is no way that osprey is going to use that platform. It's too short. It's not what it's used to. Well, they came back, they built a nest, and that's one of their kids that they fledged that next year. So they've been using that nest platform ever since. Anytime any kind of maintenance is done on the buildings, that's considered, we have to consider what impacts they're going to have. So things like that top picture with the flagging tape, they were going to have to do some air conditioning maintenance on top of that roof. And I don't know if you can see it, but that is a gravel roof. Least terns will nest on the gravel roofs. And we've had over the years had a few of our buildings that had gravel roofs that were used. So they came to and said in the winter, our money, everything has to do with the funding, right? Our money's going to come through in March, and we're going to have to go up there and tear up a bunch of this roof to redo the air conditioning. So what can we do? And so we tied flagging tape up there to discourage the least terns from coming there and nesting. That was not a roof that they'd ever used before. I just did that hoping that they wouldn't decide that was going to be the one this year. Most gravel roofs are unfortunately old technology, and our roofs are getting replaced at a fast rate. We lost 2 of them last year that had been used before for nesting, but it's old technology. There's much better things to make roofs out of. And so they're replacing the roofs. And I really believe least terns and black skimmers will use the roofs as well. They already aren't using the beaches because we've chased them off of there. And now they're losing that gravel rooftop. So I think that's something I know the state people are really looking into, how we're going to be able to help the least terns and the black skimmers and find places to nest. That's a gopher tortoise burrow under the road where the cone is. I told you they're trouble. They will dig right under there because that dirt has been disturbed and it's easy, and they'll dig there. And after a while, that asphalt will crumble and there you've got a hole in the road. So that burrow has to be scoped, and that turtle has to be relocated. Anytime they do anything along the roads, there's all kinds of things any vegetation clipping, and we get lots and lots of nests on towers. Owls will nest on the towers. That's another osprey nest. So anytime there's any kind of maintenance or demolition of a tower or anything like that, we have to work with these people that don't particularly always understand the wildlife impacts. They understand the funding issues and their job, what they have to do. So I always say half of my job's negotiation. I also do what I laugh and say nuisance wildlife response. I do a little bit of that. We actually have a group out there that responds to nuisance animals. But we work really closely with them and with the refuge, because whoever's available at the moment is the one that gets the call. So that burrow up at the top, that I know you probably can't tell this by looking at it, but that is a security violation. That gopher tortoise has dug his burrow under the edge of the fence, and every time that tortoise goes in and out of that particular fence, it's around a facility that has alarms at the top of their fence. So every time that tortoise would go in and out of that burrow, he would set off the alarms, and at least 3 KSC security cars would show up. Well, they got tired of that pretty quick. And so I had to relocate that tortoise. The alligator, we have lots and lots of really large alligators out there. And alligators are another one. They're reptiles. They're not smart. They have brain the size of a jelly bean. And they know that there's water or food or a mate on over here, and they're over there, and they don't care what's in between. They're just going to go straight there. So we do a fair amount of alligator persuading them to go other places. One of the things that I always tell people, and I get on a soapbox about, is do not feed alligators. Don't ever feed alligators. There is no reason to ever feed alligators, because when an alligator gets fed, it's trained. It gets trained, and it starts associating people with food. And then every time it sees people, it comes out looking for snacks, and somebody gets scared and they call. And if the trapper has to come out and there's no way that those alligators unlearn that behavior. And so if the trapper comes out and takes that alligator, they do not take it to some resort. They kill it. And that's the only thing they can do, because it's become a danger. So that's my soapbox. Don't ever feed alligators. Lots and lots of vultures as well. And vultures sit on things, and vultures poop. And their poop, they eat dead stuff, right? Okay. So their feces are very, very caustic and will damage a lot of things. So we do in certain areas where there's hardware or things that can't be torn up by vulture feces, we will do things to keep the vultures off. Tie things on there, make them sometimes hang effigies, which are fake dead vultures. They're pretty smart. They see that and they go, oh no, we don't want to be around here. Look what happened to Harry. So we do that. A lot of our buildings have bats in them, and people don't even realize it. And it's fine. It's not an issue until the bats, if something happens and the bats get into the building with the people. And occasionally, I think it's happened twice in 34 years, we've had to exclude bats from a building because they've gotten into the office areas where the people are. And so we exclude them. We have bat boxes out there. I don't think they get used as much as I wish they would, but like I said, they're in lots of the buildings, and people either don't mind or they don't realize it. So our bat population is pretty good. The ladder on the bottom with the nest, people get really upset with me when a bird builds a nest on their ladder, and I have to tell them, sorry, you can't use that ladder or that high lift or that van because the bird built a nest in it. And as long as there's eggs or chicks in it, that's off limits. You can't mess with it. And I always tell people, I told some guys this morning, if you don't pay attention, if you see birds carrying sticks and they're going someplace and putting them someplace in something that you want to use, a piece of equipment or something like that, you call us before they actually build the nest and we can do something about it. Once they build that nest, we can't. The picture on the bottom in the middle under that, I don't know if you can see it, but under that red arrow is a killdeer. That's the FP&L solar field out. That's a small one that's out on center. And right in the middle of the construction and the dump trucks and all the craziness and the people running around in there, she goes in there and lays her eggs. So I got the call. I went out and I put that little barricade around her. She could jump in and out of that easily. I was just afraid that when the eggs hatched and the chicks came out that they would get run over. So we barricaded her in. One day, all the construction guys loved her. They named her. They watched out for her. They were very good. And when the chicks hatched, I went out and I removed the barricade and she let them right out and took them out of the danger zone. And I'm assuming they all they fledged pretty quick. And on that bottom picture, I'm holding up a snake that they get into trouble as well. They crawl into places where they don't belong, and most people are not willing to go in and get a snake. I don't mess with venomous snakes because the pest control people have all the good equipment, the big gloves and the big sticks and the grabbers and all that stuff. But we don't kill anything. We don't, people might think that people would kill a rattlesnake or kill a water moccasin or something like that. Our pest control people are great. They do not kill those animals. They take them out far enough away where we don't have to worry about them getting in where people are working, but they release them. So we have a lot of long-term wildlife research databases on KSC. Things that I've been there 34 years, and there's several people that I work with that have been there 36, 37, 38 years in our ecological program. And some of these long-term databases started in the 70s when it was Florida Institute of Technology, FTU, Florida Technological University. That's it. I get that mixed up with FIT. What used to be UCF. In the 70s, they had the contract to do ecological monitoring on the center. So some of these databases date back to that. We have long-term databases on the Florida scrub jays, on sea turtles. We're definitely back in the 70s, not only nesting on the nesting beaches, but also in the lagoons, the juvenile turtles that are in the lagoons. I've been looking at bald eagles since 2004. We fly helicopters, find all the nests, and keep track of the fledglings, how many kids fledge. Unfortunately, this year we have not been able, because of COVID, we have not been able to do our helicopter surveys. They're really protecting their pilots and keeping them isolated because they only have 3 pilots now, and they need them for launch operations. So we have not been able to do any of our wildlife surveys. But from 2004 until through last year's nesting season, our eagle population is growing and growing. And I think last year we fledged, I want to say 23 or 24 young eagles from nests on the Space Center. So it's a really, really healthy, good population. Southeastern beach mice, I'm going to talk about them more in just a minute when I talk about the dune gopher tortoises. Wading birds, we've been looking at since 1987. We fly over the lagoon. We fly many of the impoundments and do wading bird surveys. We keep track of their reproduction as well and the colonies. And some of the wading birds are doing well. Some of them aren't doing as well as they used to. White ibises are kicking it. There are white ibis populations growing like crazy. Reddish egrets, not so much. We have the world's largest database on eastern indigo snakes. We radio tracked eastern indigo snakes for 4 years, And we had money from outside besides NASA money. And so we had 81 snakes radio tagged in Brevard and Indian River counties. And we tracked some of those snakes for almost 3 years. Most of them were about a year. And then some of them we had multiple transmitters in over time. And we have, like I said, we have the largest database, and a lot of people look at that. There's a whole society that is interested in trying to save the indigo snake. They are large predators, and they have the same problems that a lot of other large predators, like your large owls and your hawks and bears and Florida panthers. They need a lot of area. They cross a lot of roads. They get into trouble because they run into people, and people run over them with vehicles. So we have since the 70s, we've been collecting data on manatees. We have a very large manatee population, and our manatee population is growing. We have in the south end of the Banana River, we have the manatee sanctuary. It's a no motor zone. And then we've also looked at, just in general, amphibian reptile populations on the center. That was a study done in the 70s by a guy named Richard Siegel, who later on became a professor. He's up in Towson University now, but he came back for many years after he graduated and repeated his road running surveys. So we have a really good long database of amphibian and reptile populations. Okay, I want to talk about the KSC shoreline protection. This is a project that's been going on since 2010. This is some old data since 2009, and I can tell you that things have only gotten worse. We are well over 200 feet of shoreline that has receded since 1943. 1943 is the earliest aerial photography that we have. And so if you put these data on a geographical information system and look at it, you can track the recession of the shoreline, and in many places. The top half of that graph, you can see how it's receded. Well, that's right up there next to the shuttle pads, 39A and 39B, which are now being used by NASA for their missions to the moon and Mars, and 39A is being used by SpaceX. So this gets a lot of people's attention when you see that shoreline recession. If you look south of there onto the Air Force Station, the shoreline is actually accreting. So all of our sand is washing down to the Air Force Station and washing on there. Their beaches are getting bigger, and we're losing ours. So what are we losing? Easily millions of dollars of space-related facilities and infrastructure that are currently being refurbished, being used and being refurbished. A lot of money is being sunk into those two launch pads. But also a large area of relatively undisturbed coastal habitat. And there are many federally protected wildlife species. All of the sea turtles, this is the southeastern beach mouse in the middle, and an eastern indigo snake. Florida scrub jays live out there on the coast. We're losing a lot to the ocean. So you can see in the middle of that picture, this is from the helicopter, in the middle of that picture and that wasn't even a big storm. That wasn't a hurricane that did that. It was just a nor'easter came through and breached through those impoundments and over the railroad track. And it's not that far to the launch pads. So what do? We did an environmental assessment to look at different options. And what they decided to do in 2010 was to build some dunes. We built the pilot dune, which was only 250 yards long, in July of 2010. And after that dune stood up very well to Hurricane Sandy. And so they got more hurricane relief money and built the Sandy dune on either side of the pilot dune. And they did that in 2013, 2014, and it's over a mile long. So how do you build a dune? Well, the first thing they did was take out the railroad track. There's a railroad track ran right up the coast. It wasn't being used, and they wanted to take that out because we're not going to stop sea level rise. We're not going to keep the ocean from coming in. All we're doing is buying time. And sometimes some of my NASA managers, they don't understand that. But that's the truth. None of this is going to be the thing that fixes this problem. There is no fixing that problem. We're buying time. If we can buy 40 or 50 years, that'll be good. So they wanted to take that railroad track out and all that gravel, so that when the ocean does eventually take this place back, that's not going out into the water. So we got sand, trucked it in. Or for the pilot dune, the sand was free. It came from the Air Force Station. We got some of our sand back. And they gave us sand, and we built that pilot dune. And then after that, they got sand from several different places, one of them being in Titusville. The bottom left is the pilot dune before they planted it, and they hand planted native plants by just thousands of them, using the auger, and a guy going along behind him and throwing it in, and there was another guy going behind him and squirting water on it. So on the pilot dune, there was over 16,000 native plants, 250 yards, 16,000 native plants, and 170,000 native plants planted on the sandy dune. And you can see the how well these plants took off. That April 2011 is when it was first planted, and by October, it had really, the plants had taken hold and really secured that dune, because that's the job of the plants, is to secure that sand, keep it from washing out. So we looked at monitoring. We wanted to see what this was going to do, what creating these dunes was going to do for the wildlife. And what we found was that over time, the native vegetation cover increased. That's what we planted, but still there were some nuisance species that got into there. But over time, the native vegetation cover increased, the nuisance species decreased, and we monitored that pilot dune for 3 years. By the end of the 3 years, there were 25 gopher tortoise burrows and 11 resident gopher tortoises. And we captured and tagged 72 different beach mice. Those were the 3 things that we looked at in our monitoring efforts, were the vegetation, the gopher tortoises, and the beach mice. And the coolest thing that I thought that happened on that pilot dune was one day we were out there and I found an indigo snake using the dune, crawling along the dune, probably looking for mice. And it was a small female, probably immature. She was only about 3.5, 4 feet long. But that was a great day. So for the sandy dune, that's the pilot dunes on the right. The sandy dune's the one that looks, the vegetation's patchier because the vegetation's newer there. So for the sandy dune, we did the same kind of monitoring. We looked at vegetation, we looked at gopher tortoises, and we looked at beach mice. But we also wanted to do a little bit more. So we did some radio tracking. The top picture with the mouse, that arrow's pointing to a little tiny collar on the mouse that has a little tiny radio tag on it. Those tags, obviously mice are small. They can't be carrying around a big old tag with a battery on it. So those tags were very small, and they were supposed to last 3 weeks. Most of them lasted about 10 to 12 days. We also radio tagged gopher tortoises. Those white patches are the epoxy, the transmitter goes on the back end of the tortoise, epoxied on, and then the antenna goes around the front. And we tracked them for a year. Those transmitters lasted a year. So what did we find? With the sandy dune, we trapped mice, and we also did the radio tracking. And what we found was really interesting. They used the dune really fast. As soon as that thing was planted, even if the plants were still far apart and tiny, those mice were running all over that dune. We captured with our trapping on the sandy dune, remember it's 1.1 miles, 203 different individuals over, we monitored the sandy dune for 2 years. They crossed back and forth over the dune. We found more than one mouse in a single burrow several times, so they will share the burrows. And there will be a specific burrow that different mice would use. So there's some of the burrows were prime real estate, and several mice over time would use that burrow, maybe not at the same time, but over time. And we had one female mouse that moved over 1,600 feet in 2 nights. I couldn't tell you how far she moved in one night because I couldn't find her. And it never occurred to me to keep moving out and look and moving further and further and further until finally the second night I went, I can't figure out where she is. And we got in the truck and drove and found her, and she was 1,640 feet in 2 nights. So we're talking about an animal that weighs 30 grams and just in the dark overnight with the owls and the raccoons and all the other things that could get them, and moving that far. It was quite amazing. The sandy dune tortoise tracking results, we found dune or prints on the dune from the very beginning. You can see how those plants just got planted. They're far apart. They hadn't even grown at all. And those tortoises are using that dune and they're eating those plants. I was so glad that those guys that did all that planting couldn't come back out there and see what was happening to the plants they planted after they spent all that effort putting them in. But that started from the very beginning. Those tortoises were using that dune. But it took about 3 months after the vegetation was planted before they actually started digging burrows on the dune. And that was a much slower process. We'd find a burrow and then, you know, maybe a few weeks later, we'd see another one. And so it took a little bit more time. And an interesting thing that we found with the radio tracking was we'd radio tracked tortoises several years ago inland, like inland on KSC, but away from the coast, inland places like Happy Creek. I don't know if you're familiar with Happy Creek, but in the Tel-4 area, scrub areas. And the home ranges for these coastal tortoises were much smaller than the ones further inland. And I think it's just because there's so much more food out there for them to eat. And the conditions out there, even not on the created dunes, but on the natural coastline, we have many more tortoises out on that coast than we do inland, which is a little bit concerning because the sea is coming up and they're going to be losing that habitat. And we need to, we're encouraging people to think about this dune building as a managed retreat. How are we going to help these animals move themselves? Basically, I would prefer that they move themselves, give them places to go and move inland away from that coast. One of the interesting things that happened out there, and we actually got a paper published on this, was apparently alligators, and one of the students from University of Florida had found this in his thesis work, was alligators get used to eating a particular food. Alligators will eat just about anything, but a single alligator will prefer different kinds of food. Well, we had an alligator out there that apparently preferred gopher tortoises, and that's had never been documented before. Some of the students called me one day, said I was in the office, and they said, come out here. And I went out, and I wasn't here for this part, but this alligator took that tortoise and went down into the impoundment and was sitting on the edge of the impoundment. And I sat there and watched him do this, but he turned that tortoise horizontal and just crunched him. And I tell you what, I gained a whole new respect for the power of alligator jaws that day. And I found after that, 2 more of my radio tag gopher tortoises had injury, were killed. But what I found left of them, I knew they weren't road mortality, and I'm pretty sure it was alligator. So that was interesting. And like I said, we got a publication out of it that had never been documented before. We had a student from up at Towson University that came down and looked at the use by reptiles of these created dunes versus the natural dunes that were on either side. And he did a really cool thing. He put together these fences. You see the orange fence up at the top, and put buckets on either end of the fence with cameras upside down in there. And so this was passive, what we call passive trapping. Again, reptiles just aren't that smart. They go up to that fence and they crawl down the fence and crawl through the bucket. There's holes on either side of the bucket. And when they went through, they triggered the camera. It had a remote trigger, the camera and take a picture. So nothing was ever caught. We didn't have to go out there every day and check traps or do anything like that. You just go out there once a month or so and take the card out of the camera and take it back to your computer and look and see what you got. And here's some of the pictures that they got. Really, really nice, cool pictures. Pygmy rattlesnake on the created dune, Florida box turtle, black racers, southeastern beach mice. I'm using those kinds of cameras right now, and I'm getting all kinds of stuff, mostly beach mice. You'd be amazed how many beach mice are out there on our beach. You would not think for a moment, if you just looked at our population, that these things are federally threatened, but they are. but lots of coach whips, lots of different kinds of lizards, all kinds of stuff going through those cameras. I love those cameras. That was a great idea. So Hurricane Sandy built the Sandy Dune, and then in October of 2016, we get blasted with Hurricane Matthew. The picture on the left, you can see the greenery, that's vegetation. That's before Matthew. The picture on the other side, and you can see the red lines, your reference point, that's after Matthew. September 2016, this is the north end of the Sandy Dune after Matthew. It blasted the north end of the Sandy Dune. We lost about 85 feet of the Sandy Dune. The rest of the Sandy Dune and the Pilot Dune stood up to Hurricane Matthew like a champ. It lost a little bit of ground on the east side, but in general, it was intact. And so they got Hurricane Matthew money to build more dune. This is just where you can see this time the dune, the water washed almost to the road. And that really woke a lot of people up. That road's a main artery out there along the beach. And a lot of that road was underwater during that hurricane. So they started building the Matthew Dune. And for 2 years, they built that. We are currently monitoring that. I can say that storms have gotten more frequent and have gotten more violent. We have lost a fair amount of the Matthew Dune, sand they just put out there, to storms, nor'easters even, that have come in and been so rough that they've taken out a lot of the sand that they just put in, a lot of the plants. And again, I just want to stress, we are not going to hold back the ocean. And when people look at that and they say, oh, well, look at that, you've lost so much of your dune, you've lost so much of your sand, I tell them to turn around and look what's behind it, because what's behind it is still safe. And that's the point, is we're protecting that infrastructure and we're giving these animals a place to go, because that east side's, we're losing it. And no matter what we do, we're going to continue losing it. So they are getting ready to put some more sand out there after Hurricane Dorian blasted us, and they're going to reinforce some of the Sandy Dune and the Matthew Dune, just make it a little bit wider in areas that washed out some. And that's happening, that's getting ready to start here in the next few weeks. So I'll go back to the very first thing. Be humble, for you are made of earth. Be noble, for you are made of stars. We have got such a treasure out there. And I think most of you all are local. I know some of you work out on the refuge or volunteer out there and do this. I'm preaching to the choir with that. I get it. I am always amazed when I do talks for employees of the Space Center a lot of times, or local groups around here that maybe aren't as nature oriented. Have you ever been out to the wildlife refuge? No. If I get 3 people in an audience of 15 or 20 that have been to the wildlife refuge, that's a lot. People just either don't know or don't appreciate how blessed and lucky we are to be where we are. I think it's just one of the most incredible places in the universe. And I can't express how happy I am that NASA takes that responsibility seriously. The Fish and Wildlife Service at Merritt Island takes that responsibility seriously, and we're all working together. And that's the title of my talk. And we balancing technology and nature. If we work that balance and we work together, we can have it all. We can go to the moon, we can go to Mars, and we can still keep what we have here that is so special and so beautiful. So with that, I'll wrap it up. That's my email address. I go by Becky because my middle name's Rebecca, but my email address at work is mary.r.bolt@nasa.gov. I know we're going to have a little question and answer session here. And but if you have comments or questions, or you think of something later, feel free to email me. All right. I don't have any problem answering emails. I'll be happy to get back with you. So with that, Ms. Rochelle.
All right. Thank you so much. So first of all, yay! Thank you so much for that. We did have a couple of questions, so let me get to those first. Megan asked, this is the same question I had when you did this for the Master Naturalist. Has there ever been a recorded sighting of a panther at the Space Center?
There was a guy, and I'm going to say, I'm going to guess, the older I get, the worse time I have with my time lapsing here, but I'm going to guess he was about 15, 20 years ago. He did his master's thesis at UCF, and he came out and he was going to try to document panthers on the refuge. And he spent 2 years gathering data, looking for any sign of panthers. And he ended up doing his master's thesis on bobcats because he could find nothing. We have not ever had a road mortality. We have not ever had a track, a footprint. So really, as large an area as a panther needs, we would never have a resident panther. Now, all that being said, I have had a couple of times had people that I trust, that I know aren't, just seeing a big bobcat or whatever. People that I trust tell me that they have seen a panther out there. So it's quite possible that a panther could pass through there. But as far as a resident, I have a friend that actually used to work with us. Her son went to a hunt camp here in Cocoa, and they had a game camera set up. And I saw the video from that game camera, and it was a panther. So they're around, so they could potentially pass through there. They'd have to come in through the north end from the Oak Hill up that way, because I can't imagine them crossing the causeway bridges, that I just can't, or swimming that far across maybe they would swim that far across the river, but the Indian River, but I don't know. So that's the answer to that.
Thank you.
I never say never about anything.
This is true. It's unprecedented times we're in.
Yes.
Harry was asking, since you can't use the helicopters during COVID, are drones a possibility for doing any of the study work?
There is a group of engineer type people out there that have drones, and they have used them for different projects, not for wildlife stuff. But there are a couple of guys in the ECO program that are investigating the possibility of using drones for things. And so that may happen. I think they're going to use drones pretty soon to measure, again, to take GPS points of our shoreline to keep track of the recession of the shoreline. But as far as doing things like, they let me use a drone one time. I didn't drive it. The engineer guys drove it, but they took it over one of our roofs to look and see if they could see the least terns nesting on the roof. But we couldn't ever do that. There's some things you're just not going to be able to use it for, because by the time they got low enough, it scared the birds up. So some things we might be able to use drones for, other things we're just not going to be able to. I would think that an eagle would take a drone out, So,
that would be an interesting account.
Yeah. But they are looking at using drones. I think it's an amazing, great technology. So we'll see.
Fantastic. And then the next question, on that photo that you had with the towers, Becky, the bird that was on the far right that had perished, what type of bird was that? Do you remember? You want to go back to that slide?
I can go back to that slide, but you guys are going to have to tell me what kind of bird it was. Let's see. Am I going backwards? Oh, I'm going the wrong way. There we go.
Yeah, it was pretty early on, and I
Right.
forgot to look before the question was asked.
Whoop. There it is. Okay. Let me do this and make it bigger. What do you think? I wrote all those down when I identified all those birds and wrote them all down when I got them, but that's been years ago and I don't know. That's a snowy egret, obviously. And that's a rail, the far side, but what that warbler is, I don't know.
Okay, 1 second. Sorry, Becky, I need to unmute you. I was just trying to unmute everyone else, and there we go.
Okay, yeah.
All right. Not a warbler. I'm just trying to look at the feet. Let's leave this as a mystery. Anybody else who wants to put in the chat what you think it is, please do so. But in the meantime, I'll go on to the next questions because it's kind of hard to tell from that angle. But if anyone has a guess, please put that in the chat.
What I can do too is go back in my data and look and figure out what it is. So I just don't know off the top of my head.
Susan is just writing that she, this is funny, she put it in Merlin, the Bird ID app that we use, or maybe she just Googled it. Instead, it came up with Kirkland's warbler, which is funny because it's definitely not that. So, all right. And then Heather wanted to know about coyotes. There's a coyote population on the world, in the SCAS.
Oh yeah. And it has grown a lot during the last few years. I remember, you know, back when I first started out there, and for many years there were no coyotes out there. At least we never saw any coyotes. And then, you know, I see a couple here and there, and different people, that field people would say they saw coyotes. And I've seen several road mortalities. I've seen one time a friend of mine and I were out on one of the dike roads. We were going out into one of the impoundments, and he's a big photographer. He actually takes pictures of the eagles for me when we fly. And he's got this gigantic camera and all this stuff, right? So we're in the truck and we're driving out, and this coyote comes out in front of us with 3 pups, and they're bouncing all over the road and playing and everything. And he didn't have a camera with him. So we didn't get any pictures. But yeah, there's definitely coyotes. They've become a problem digging up sea turtle nests. And so on the Air Force station, there's a price on their heads. If they see them out on the beach, they'll shoot them. But we haven't gotten that many. We haven't had any trouble with them on the KSC side with the coyotes getting the nests. So yeah, but they're definitely out there.
Fantastic. And we're getting, this is quite the popular slide here, because the next question is about the bird on the left. I think, Carol, are you suggesting that that's a mangrove cuckoo or yellow-billed cuckoo? It's kind of hard with them with this position, I must say. Jim, I see you've unmuted. Did you want to weigh in on either the bird on the left or the bird on the right?
I could believe it was a yellow-billed cuckoo, because I remember we did get some of those.
Yeah, the top part of it looks that I don't know if it's, are the feathers smashed or is that dirt? I'm trying to see.
They ran into something, so it's probably smashed.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's mainly that white belly and the tail feathers that sparks it out for me.
Okay, thank you, Carol.
The one on the right is a warbler of some kind, I think. The one on the left, I believe, is a rail.
The one on the left's a rail. I just don't remember what kind of rail.
I think that bird on the right looks like a palm warbler's undertail, personally.
It does, but it's not the white belly. That's a big bird right there. Look at the legs.
And maybe it's the scale, because I was thinking it was larger too, but then I'm not sure how zoomed in that is.
Right.
I tell you what, this has created a lot of interest, Becky. Would you mind looking at the data, and then I'll be happy to put it out in our meetup. After meetup, we have a little chat that goes out to everyone, and then people will, I think, feel good knowing that.
I will look it up. I will look it up and let you know.
Thank you, Becky.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Becky.
I'm not going to do it till Tuesday, though. I'm off this weekend.
That's right. Happy Monday. Happy holiday on Monday.
Right.
All right. So while I'm just going to go ahead and switch screens here real quick, but first, before I switch back to my slides, we're going to take a little group photo, meaning we're going to go on the screen. So anyone who wants to undo their videos, but if you don't prefer to have your picture on, just leave it on the other video, and we'll see if anybody else wants to.
I have a quick question.
Yes.
How old do tortoises live to be? They used to live to be like 400 years old.
I think that if you have a tortoise a gopher tortoise, that's what I'm talking about. If you have a gopher tortoise in captivity, I have been told that they'll live, 80, 90 years. But I think that's
what's happening to them though, because they used to live. Turtles, period, used to live to be 400 to 500 years old.
There's a lot of stuff out there to get them that didn't used to get them, and those kinds of tortoises that live those long times or were much larger. I don't know what the life expectancy of a Galapagos tortoise is, but
so it has to do with how large they are and how large their heart is and stuff.
Probably. I mean, as far as I know that the larger, your larger Aldabra and your gopher or Galapagos
Galapagos.
tortoises are going to live longer than a gopher tortoise or a desert tortoise. Yeah.
And what little insight I have into this, no, I'm not an expert by any means, but I've just gone to a couple different Galapagos talks. They have so much protection there because they're on a lot of places that can't be inhabited at all ever. And so it's one of the oldest populations for that reason, because man hasn't interfered with them the way
So-
we have as humans on so many other habitats.
Right.
So it's more of like they're in a natural place where it's mostly natural and it hasn't been inhabited for probably 400 years at the least. And then you have, I forgot what I was gonna say, but yeah, I forgot.
And Bert, Bert, by the way, is part of the board for 100 Acre Hollows that has a really large population of gopher tortoises, the one that
Really?
Becky was showing. He also, I think, is still a member, if I remember, Bert, of the Gopher Tortoise Council. Bert, would you like to take yourself off mute, make any comments related to what you've seen at 100 Acre Hollows with the gopher tortoises out there?
Yeah, last February, we did a survey. 100 Acre Hollows is 114 acres. It used to be a water treatment facility, so it's got 6 basins with large berms that go all the way around the basins. And the gopher tortoises prefer those berms right along the edge of the basins. We did the survey in February, and it was a little over 400 gopher tortoise burrows active that we found.
Wow.
So that insinuates there's probably around 200 gopher tortoises out there. And we've got them from newborn to, well, not 400 years old, but they're pretty big. I think it was, Pat, do you remember, was it 43 centimeters or something like that?
Wow.
Oh, wow.
So we've got some pretty big burrows, but we had to get a permit from FWC in order to just do the measurements of those gopher tortoise burrows.
Oh, yeah.
And we've got all that data. It's on the 100 Acre Hollows website if anybody wants to go and look at that. And Becky, I invite you to come out there as a Gopher Tortoise Council member. And actually, everybody's welcome. We'll be open this Sunday from 3 to 5.
Where is that? I'm not familiar with that.
It's 1170 Rock Springs Drive, and you're going to have to look it up on Google because to try to describe how to get into that subdivision.
What town is it though?
It's in Suntree, Viera
Oh,
area.
Century. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And Bert, would you mind putting the 100 Acre Hollows website address, URL, and the address in the chat window so people can copy that down?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And while Bert's doing that, are there any other questions for Becky?
I had one comment about what Bert said. And I just said this to some people this morning. When I always tell people, you build it, they will come. They build these berms around things and the tortoises love that. So they put berms around everything and they're creating their own problems, but it gives the tortoises someplace to go. So that's cool. But yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if you don't have more than a 50% occupancy rate, because a lot of times in those artificial situations, there'll be almost one tortoise to every burrow. It wouldn't surprise me at all.
Yeah, we definitely have quite a few of them out there, and we see them on a pretty regular basis, and
Yeah,
we have them in our native plant garden.
that's
yeah,
cool.
we Becky, so we have a grant that we received for Audubon, and we built a 30 by 50 native plant garden there.
Huh.
And the first time after we put our plants in, you were showing that picture when Bert and I first went out there to see if the plants were taking hold, doing all the watering. There was a gopher tortoise there was a burrow much closer because we had to measure and make sure the garden was far enough from any active or known burrows. And there he was, just chowing down like it was M&Ms. I'm like, bring in the supplies, bring in the backups. He's just gonna have the whole garden wiped out before it gets too big. But they love it out there.
Oh, that's
All
funny.
right. Any other questions before we go to our raffle? All right, so Megan's going to capture one more screenshot, but we all need to be clapping. Clap for Becky while she does the screenshot. Keep clapping because she's got to hit control. Yes, there we go. Thank you. All right, and Becky, let's make the announcement. And Charlie, where are you? There, did I lose Charlie? There you are. I have to follow the squares. There's so many. So I wanted to just introduce, I think many of you know Charlie. He is given at the Space Coast Birding and Wildlife Festival amazing talks about the Crookshanks. One of the folks who help the Audubon chapter provide what we do to you through an endowment they left for us, but also named after them is the Crookshanks Sanctuary, where everyone loves to go to see scrub jays. So he has quite a long history about the Crookshanks. But why I'm saying it's so wonderful to have him here tonight, as it always is because Becky is announcing the release of her book. She's just written a book. It's just getting ready to get released officially to the public in a couple of weeks. And guess who wrote the foreword? Charlie. Charlie, do you want to say hi to everyone? You want to take off yourself off mute and say hello? Oh, we don't quite hear you. You're off mute, but I don't know why we don't hear you. I still don't hear you. So I can see you talking and I see you're not on mute. Do you have a headset to plug in? No. Okay. Well, Charlie, let's see if you can plug a headset or something in and we can get to you. And if not, Becky, would you like to hold up the cover of the book and show everyone?
I felt kind of weird about doing this, and I asked Rochelle yesterday. I said, "Do you mind if I just plug my book?" She says, "I insist." So okay, I'll quit being bashful. I wrote I don't know how well you can see it. It's called My First Birder's Life List. It's a small book. It's for kids. They have to be independent readers, or somebody could read it to them, I suppose. But it's written for independent readers. About 3.5 years ago, my granddaughter was turning 7, and I was looking for a life list for her. I was going to, take her out and get her birding with me and stuff. And I was looking for a life list for her that was sort of interesting, not boring like our adult life list, right? And I couldn't find one. So I decided to write one. So it's got 20 birds in it. Let me see if I can do this. It's got 20 birds in it. And the rules are, the bird has to be in the United States, every state in the United States during some time of the year. And it has to be either large or do something that is, that will be the kid to be able to recognize it without necessarily having to have binoculars, because who wants to spend a bunch of money on a kid's binoculars when they're 7 or 10, right? So things like, it's got great blue heron, bald eagle, it's got common nighthawk, which people think, well, that's small and cryptic, but when you see a common nighthawk flying and it starts doing those noises and that booming noise and stuff, kingfisher. So it's got 20 birds in it. It's got notes in the back. It's got a glossary to help teach them some of the basic birding jargon. So yeah, I've been working on it almost 4 years, and I'm just really tickled. I asked Charlie to write the foreword, which he did, and it's awesome. And so I've got this printed. I got it printed, and my sister and I are going through it with a fine-tooth comb to make sure there's no mistakes in it. And so sometime in next week or the week after, I'm going to get it printed for real. So when that happens, I will be letting Rochelle know. So if anybody wants to order these for their children or their grandchildren or other things, other kids, even beginning birders would probably enjoy having it. So I'll let you know when that happens.
Fantastic. We'll put a note out to everybody. And in the meantime, we're going to have a drawing for 2 of the books. So she's going to autograph the books. And what will happen is we'll either distribute them to you or mail them to you, depending on where you are. So if it's someone, so please, if I announce your name and you won the book, then please put your email address either in the chat and I'll copy it down, or Megan, if you wouldn't mind copying it down for me, or just put a message in Meetup, and then that message will come directly to me. So let's see, let you pick a number between, let me just count up all of our stuff. I wrote everyone down as they came in, 1 to 18. Becky, you pick the number? Yes.
7.
Okay, so number 7 is Ann Hicks. Woo. So yay! Annex has certainly some aspiring young birders, and she has grandkids, so that's really good. And for the second book, the same thing, the number between 1 and 18.
13.
All right, number 13, the Mako family. So, hey, Mako family, yay! So I think I have your email address, Mako family, but in the case I don't, please put it in the chat, and then we'll get that book out to you guys. So that's book number 2.
So it's going to be, so I'm not going to give you these. I'm going to wait till I get the final printed because I have found mistakes. So as soon as I get that printed, I'll get them to you right then.
Thank you. And Mako family, see, it was worth all the effort when you were having technical issues to get in. You won a prize. Isn't that great? We were working in the background like, try this, try that, all this kind of stuff that you guys didn't all get to see. So thank you so much for that. So one more big round of applause while I'm switching screen share for Becky. Yay! Thank you so much, Becky. That was absolutely fabulous.
Thank you. I really enjoyed it. You guys are great.
And let's let the wonder of door prizes continue. Let me have Bert bring himself off of mute once again. We have a couple more door prizes that he and his wife Val have donated. Bert, would you like to give a little bit of background about those prizes, and then we'll do our next drawing?
Yeah, so Val and I were both members, Jaguar Society members at the Brevard Zoo. And we also volunteer at the Brevard Zoo in the Sea Turtle Healing Center. And so as part of those activities, we received some tickets for visiting the Brevard Zoo. So what I've got is 3 pairs of tickets. Two of those pairs are just your regular general admission. And then two of the tickets, one pair, is for the very important zoo pass. And what that gives you is general admission, as well as a free train ride, kayaking, giraffe feeding, and aviary feeding. So that'll be the top prize. So if we could have Becky once again give us some numbers, start out with a first number and see who gets the first pair of tickets.
About number 1.
Number 1, Christine. Yay, Christine. Let's see, let me go back to my view. Did she have to drop? She was on earlier. She was one of our first people. That's how she got number 1. I don't see her on the screen now. But I do have her details. Christine, if I've missed you, I don't see you back on the screen now. Maybe she's just stepped off for a minute. But, oops, there we go. So she'll be pair number 1. So let's go for pair number 2.
And we're going to put the pressure on Becky again.
Yes, between 1 and 18. Preferably for not doing the same numbers you picked before, which was 1, 7, and 13. 16? Yeah. All right, so let's see, where is 16 on here? Number 16 is Connie. Let me just see, Connie's on mute. Where are we, Connie? You're on screen number 3, I think. Oh, Connie's not Connie. Connie is Charlie. Yes, sorry, Charlie. Your name has, I wrote it down as your thing. So Charlie is Charlie, actually, using Connie's thing. Hi, Charlie.
I had to use her login for a meeting. So can you hear me? I guess you can.
We can hear you now. Yes, thank you.
Yeah, so yeah, and I had changed it when I logged in the first time. So no, this is not Connie. And I didn't refer to any other tendencies that I might have.
All right, well, Charlie, I'll write down that that's you. So you're the winner of pair number 2. And now, drum roll, the third pair, which will be the VIP tickets. Who is our lucky winner, Becky?
Did I already pick 3?
You did not.
3.
And let me see, number 3 is Pat Touchberry.
Right, Pat.
Yay, Pat!
I love it.
And I know she's got some little ones in her life who will love going on the train ride and feeding the giraffes and the kayak and everything else that comes with those tickets. So congratulations to Pat.
Thank you.
And we'll see you tomorrow. So Bert can just hand you the tickets tomorrow.
Correct.
Anyone else? Charlie, if you're coming out for Chain of Lakes tomorrow, I don't remember if you're on the list, or who was our first winner? I've already forgot to write that down. Who was the first winner?
Christine.
Oh, Christine. Okay, yes, Christine. I'll have to message her. All right. Well, thank you to all of our winners. Yay! And thank you so much. Our sincere appreciation to Bert and Val for donating those tickets for us. So any other questions, any other announcements that we missed early on? Anything else that anyone else would like to share this evening?
So I didn't get a chance to finish since my computer ran out of energy, but I really am grateful for Becky for asking me to do the forward. I was honored. I've worked with Becky. She's kind of a rookie because I think she started after I did. I started in '81, and so she's still got a couple years to catch up on me. But anyways, it was really grateful, and I hope everybody goes out there and buy those books for their kids, their grandkids, their nephews and nieces. Because it's a really wonderful piece of work.
Thank you for that, Charlie. And I look forward to reading the foreword. She's given me a little bit of insight to that. It sounds really very special. Well, I don't see any other hands raising. I see a lot of people waving and that kind of stuff. So it's really been my pleasure to see everyone tonight. I hope those of you who were lucky enough to clear the wait list have a good time tomorrow. Be sure to bundle up. For everyone else, there's a lot of other stuff coming up. The one key with the COVID is sign up as soon as you see it come out. And please do be mindful if you're not able to go, please do change your RSVP because Meetup will automatically notify the next person and we get the wait lists are very full. I do also want to thank you. I forgot to mention earlier, thank everyone who attended the eBird class last night. We had a very nice sized group for our intermittent eBird and just really had some fun times with some of the scenarios that we went. And I think we got some great practice in and learned some new skills with Dee and David Simpson that teaching that. And everyone else, have fun out on the trails. Hopefully you'll participate in some of the citizen science stuff that Bert has mentioned. And if we don't see you otherwise, we'll plan to see you again next month when we'll learn about purple martins. It's been my pleasure to host you all this evening. Thank you so much, and be safe and enjoy the trails, and happy birding. See you soon. Good night.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks, Michelle. Last night, the scenarios were great.
Oh, good. I was just telling Susan she was one of the scenarios, and even though she didn't know it, but those were all real scenarios. So
Yeah, that was a good way to do it.
Great. Thank you so much.
All right, good night, everybody.
All right. Good night, Turners. Good night. Bye, everyone. Congratulations, winners.
Hey.
Night.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night. Thank you. Thanks for joining.